here with our 4th place Canola Challenge Yield winner and another delegate from the OCJ. So Jen, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jen Dolman. I am a canola grower in Renfrew County, and I'm most recently a director in the newly created Zone 3, which is east of Pickering. And I'm a certified crop advisor who's just independent to work on my own farm. And I've been asked today to participate and ask lots of great questions today.
Excellent. And Dave, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Dave Schill. I farm in Temiskaming District from New Liskeard up into the Englehart area. We cash crop about 20,000 acres in the area, and been a long time canola grower through the good and the bad times. And yeah, glad to join you here.
Excellent. All right, well, I'll pull up some of the photos we had from the field and we can talk about those. 1 second. There we go. Okay, so they're a little out of, there we go. There's some photos from the field. Just wanted to have some of these nice looking images. If you want to talk about them at all, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Our season started off fantastic. We had an early spring up here, which is rare. It was cold, but the soil was dry, very fit. So, you know, we started planting canola around the 5th of May. But one thing that's unfortunate is when you're planting canola early like that is it's slow. So the seed went into ideal conditions. The ground was extremely cold, which is conducive to a lot of flea beetle competition. So I'm going to say this is probably the worst year we've ever had to deal with flea beetles. So we did spray. We did have to replant some fields. This is the first year in about the last 3 or 4 that I elected to not put Lumiderm on my seed treatment, and so that kind of backfired against us. But yeah, so the crop got off to a bit of a slow start due to the cold soils and some of the pest problems we had to deal with. Then we got some nice rains and just some fantastic heat. You can just see we just had field after field of big, thick, cabbagey canola, and it was fantastic. The picture, if you see on the left of our sprayer, that's one of our sprayer operators. He's just being a bit of a card there, but the canola, you can see the sprayer, you know, is we're 6 feet tall canola underneath that sprayer. The field on the right is a different field about 20 miles north of there, and that's my daughter. She stands about 6 feet tall, and she's in another luscious field of canola. And the picture down the center is just a generic picture of one of our fields there, just how thick and cabbagey it got in the June month there.
Lots of vegetation.
Lots of vegetation, yeah.
Just a couple other pictures I grabbed from your Twitter account.
Sure. Yeah, so that picture of those pods, that's one thing we've been growing. We're always trying to grow the newest varieties possible. We typically haven't been, you know, jumping in with 2 feet when we get a new variety into the system. Those there are pods off of L345. And the reason I was showing those is I've never seen, you know, typically you get 32 seeds per pod is you know, you're in good shape. You know, at 5 to 7 plants per row foot or square foot, you know, if you get that 30 to 32 seeds per pod into the harvest, you know, you're in good shape. A lot of those pods in there had 36 and 38 seeds in them, and we just thought we were off to a real winner anyways. And that's just a generic picture at our pit dumping canola. So
yeah, fair enough. I think you were maybe just celebrating the last load there in that photo.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. Yeah, that was the last load of canola. We had a horrible canola harvest. It was brutal up here. We just had rain event after rain event after rain event. You know, and we were talking a little bit earlier about lodging issues. We had 1,000 acres of canola that was flat in the ground, and it was absolutely horrific. So when we got to the last load of canola, boy, it was quite a celebration. So we pulled out the cigars and had a beer.
It was definitely into October too. So
yes, it was. Yes, it was. It was right into October, and it was a hair-raising event, that's for sure.
Very good. So you shared some of the crop input info, so I've got it up here. I see you're using seeds per acre. Is that that's now I guess bags are being labeled for seeds per acre, so it's a little easier for us to or seeds per bag, I guess. A little easier for us to talk about rates that way.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I'm finding too, the seed size, it's just a tremendous variability in the seed size that's coming in, even if it's the same variety. The different seed lots, like there's a huge, there could be 20% more seeds in a bag from, I mean, how should I say that? Less pounds in a bag than what we're used to. So, I mean, you can't go by the pound. Um, we have some situations on some finer textured soils. If we get too far beyond that 5 to 7 plants, the crop isn't going to stand up. So we have to be, conscious of lodging issues. We have to be conscious of how much we're putting out there. And it's a cost factor. I mean, when you're looking at $800 a bag for canola seed, you got to manage that. I mean, we're typically planting in around that. I think we finished the year off in around that 4 pounds per acre. I think it worked out to. Yeah, so you just got to be conscious of what's going on there. It costs too much money, and it can go backwards on you pretty quickly.
Right. Yeah. So I see you split some nitrogen too. So I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, and then we'll turn it over to Jen for some questions.
Sure. When it comes to fertility, I mean, there's just so many factors that need to be, focused on. Nitrogen, of course, it's canola loves nitrogen. I mean, there's no secrets there. The reason we're splitting that is we always seem to be running into that situation. I think most farmers are now, where big rain events, like you'll get a dry spell or something, and then you're praying for that rain, and the next thing you know, you get a 5 or 6 inch event. So my perspective is on that is, you've always got some in the tank if you have those big events and you have some leaching going on. And I've just found, like, you know what, we got the infrastructure here, we got the equipment. It does cost you money, but spend an extra $5 or $6 to go back out with your rig and top it up just before those flowers start to set is really important, and to make sure that you have enough nitrogen there to get through that critical period, I think has been good. We don't want too much pre-plant nitrogen. In my area, what we're really struggling with is a swede midge issue.
Right. And
what I'm finding, and I'm not saying this is gospel, but what I'm finding is if we put too much nitrogen up front, we get, and as I had some of those pictures, big cabbagey plants.
Right.
It takes time to do that. And when you have real high nitrogen rates pre-plant, you get excessive plant growth, and it doesn't want to bolt quickly. Mm-hmm. We want to get that plant moving quickly. So we put, adequate amounts of phosphorus in furrow, and we have just a nice amount of nitrogen there to make sure things are moving along as quickly as we can. And then once we get it into the bolt stage and we get past that critical stage where swede midge can infect, we're coming back and then topping it up. If we get into a scenario where there's a farm, where there's a wreck, like where we just know there's just way too much swede midge there, we won't apply the extra nitrogen. We'll just leave it as it is. It's still sufficient just to finish the year off, but we've learned that coming back with those big nitrogen rates early, and if it gets hit, there's nothing going to stop it. So swede midge is helping us make, as much as I hate swede midge, it helps us make a lot of critical decisions in planning ahead of time.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. So yeah, and it makes sense too. I mean, 100 pounds is enough to get the crop through if you don't think there's value in adding that extra 40 pounds. I like that. Okay, so unless you had anything else you wanted to tell us about, we can turn it over to Jen to just ask you a couple of questions.
I think what's interesting is, I mean, we've really moved back here is, the industry or we've been taught a lot is about removal rates and fertility. With canola, I'm finding, because we have a lot of really extremely low testing dirt.
Okay.
And nitrogen, of course, is talked about, but very little do we focus on potash, very little do we focus on calcium and phosphorus. And I'm finding in canola, like canola has the second highest uptake of calcium of any crop, second to soybeans. It's got the highest uptake of potash of any crop in my rotation. It's double that of soybeans. So what we are doing, and it says here I've got 60 pounds of potash broadcast, but I don't have in there is we also fall broadcasted another 60 pounds. And then we're using calcium either in the form of gypsum or a 35% prilled calcium that we're using as well. Some of that's getting broadcasted, some of it's getting put down in furrow. This year, going forth, because we've had a lot of soil testing done the last 2 years and we're just putting that data together, we're going to be really focusing on our calcium and our potash. Nitrogen's a given. I mean, that's, you know what, nitrogen's your extension cord. It's what carries the current, but we got to fill that cord up with fertility. And potash and calcium are two places that we're finding that I think are going to be integral for us to try and reach that next level in fertility. When we look at tissue samples and stuff like that, those are two things that are showing up. You know, of course, we're putting boron on stuff. Of course, we're doing those very simple things. We've got adequate nitrogen there. We're putting a nice little starter package together. But we're going to be doing a lot of work this next season here, trying to take some of those things that maybe aren't discussed as much. We've taken everything back. You know, we look at the base saturation of our soil tests and we just go from there. So we're going to have multiple fertility packages for different farms, and we're going to be putting our farms into quadrants where, okay, so these farms are, you know, the base saturation is 65% and above. So those farms will get a certain blend from 50 to 60% base saturation calcium. We'll be putting a different blend on, and then below 50%, you know, we'll have another blend, trying to address some of these issues across the variability of our fields. So.
Very interesting. Thanks so much. All right, we've got a few more minutes, so I'll turn it over to Jen if you had a few questions to ask Dave.
Hi, Dave. If you're okay with that, I'm going to actually ask a couple more on fertility, because it seems like you're, even if you're not actually taking on the 4R strategy at this point, it does sound like your management very much, is focused on the right place, the right time, the right rate. And so the question I have for you is your sulfur in furrow. Is that elemental, or what form is that typically?
So we've been using gypsum in the past as well to trying to address sulfur and calcium. And we also use a product here. It's called, I just have a little thing of it. It's called Tiger Combo. It's just Tiger brand. And it's basically, it's 50% sulfate form. And we just put that in our blends here, in our blender, and then we just deal with it that way. I like having the sulfur right in the row because it's there when that plant's just a little baby plant. It's available, and this stuff here is extremely safe. There's absolutely no salt index to it. You don't have to worry about it burning. It fits in really nice. You know, the old-fashioned way of putting on some ammonium sulfate, that's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But typically, you know, there's this, in the broadcast situation, those roots need to be moving. You need the right range to move it in through to the soil profile. We put the Tiger Combo right in the furrow. It's there from day one, and it's available.
A lot of what you're doing also seems to focus around integrated pest management in terms of your management. What's your typical crop rotation?
So typically speaking, so we'll go canola, winter wheat, and then out of winter wheat, we'll go into soybeans. After soybeans, we'll go back into cereal grains, you know, oats, barley. We have learned that canola, of course, you know, especially with the Swede midge issue, you know, 4, 5, 6 years, I have a lot of land that's coming into production, that's new land. So, I mean, I have a benefit with having this new land. I have some farms that haven't seen canola for 10 years. So we're trying really hard in order to maintain our yields that we can get up here is to reach farther and farther longer rotations. I'd like to keep it within that canola within that 15 to 20% of my rotation. But as we increase our farm size, that makes it easier for me to do because there's new land coming in, and typically our new land that's coming into production, After clearing, typically we'll go in with oats first. It's a moderate demanding crop. Oats seem to do really well on the new land, and then that sets it up for the next year for canola where we can really hit it.
Sounds good. We talked also about seeding rates. I know in my own equipment, I sometimes struggle with being able to get my seeding rates low enough for the smaller seed lots. What do you use for planting equipment?
Yeah, so we have an 1890 John Deere, but what we've done to address that issue is we bulk our seed all into the fertilizer. And I know there's some mixed emotions about that, especially when we live in a world where everybody wants to use planters. They want to be, extremely precise. I'm not seeing a benefit of that on our farm. We had a planter. We've tried those things. The extra cost of the equipment wasn't justified by doing it and reducing our seeding rates. We can't reduce our seeding rates too low here. Anything below 4 pounds, and we get into any critical issues like pests, like flea beetles or Swede midge, we run out of steam really quickly. So we want adequate plant stand, like I said, in that 5 to 7 plants per square foot. If we have less than that and we have a pest outbreak, we just run out of gas. Yeah. It just seems like you don't have enough seed treatment there in the plant to deal with those issues. It just overrides it. So we're going to maintain that 5 to 7 plant stand, but I'm bulking that right into the fertilizer. We have our own fertilizer blending system here, so we just put it in there, and it's very easy to adjust your rates then. It takes away some of the problems that we've had in the past of, you put a bag in the pickup truck, you take the bags to the field, the guy takes the bags up the ladder into the air seeder. Oh, he lost half a bag. Oh, he dropped a bag off the pickup truck. Oh, he left the bag sitting underneath the seeder at night, and we came back and they were gone. So some of those issues that we've been dealing with, we take care of in the yard here. It takes away all the ionus off of the operator so that the operator, he can concentrate on seed depth and planting, and he doesn't have to worry about, if there's a seal gone in the roller and it dumps the seed out, and all that kind of stuff.
So that lodged crop you're able to pick it all up, I guess. That you said you had 1,000 acres lodged. That must have been a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, that was really, really challenging. I have a great group of operators here, and I mean, they were all well and sick and tired of canola by then, but some of it we even had to cut one way. You drive half a mile with a combine cutting, turn around, drive empty, and then come back. It was difficult. Yeah, no, it was horrible. And, I think we're very fortunate to have the equipment we do. But definitely, I didn't think we'd get it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great that we had you on for the video. I know our winter canola growers took the top 3 spots this year, and for sure they had incredible crops, and I walked a lot of those fields and they were beautiful. But it's good to see you placing 4th, and I'm glad we got the chance to talk to you. We had a little bit lower yield across the province this year, but I know there's still lots of strong yielding farms and good growers out there. So congratulations. And I don't know if you guys had any last thoughts, but we'll just say thank you for coming out, and we'll talk to you again, hopefully next year in person.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Good meeting you. Thank you.
I'm here with our 3rd place canola yield challenge winners and the chairman of the Canola Growers Association. So Hubert, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Hi everyone, Hubert Beaudry. I'm a farm out at Cache Bay. I farm 1,600 acres with my father, and I'm chair of the Ontario Canola Growers Association.
Excellent. And Bob and Dallas, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Introduce ourselves. Yeah. I'm the senior, I guess, Bob Hunter, and then my son David and my grandson Dallas, and we operate Prince Edward County Farms. We farm close to 5,000 acres of mixed crops, corn, soybeans, canola, hay once in a while thrown in. And I guess I'm a little bit, or maybe a bunch excited about the winter canola potential. I've probably grown canola for, I don't know, probably 40, 50 years, I'm not sure. And I did grow winter canola, got off to an excellent start and got quite enthused. And then as we increased the acreage, we got into more and more winter kill. And finally, my two senior sons said to me they were probably going to fire if I didn't quit growing it, because when it dies, it doesn't die in one side of the field, it's all over the place, and then it gets full of weeds and mess, and it's somewhat disgusting. So they were probably right. But we probably haven't grown winter canola for, I don't know, maybe 20 years. So my feeling was we would have new genetics with hopefully a little more strength. And so we took a run at it. I guess our second year, I think. Screwed up big time this year, I guess, in all honesty. That was the year we had the toughest winter, and light was even hurt, but it sure kicked the pants out of the winter rapeseed. But I knew it had more potential now, and so we went back and we put a lot of tender loving care in it, kind of babying it and doing everything we could think of, added boron, added sulfur, spring and all, probably put nitrogen on maybe as much as 3 times, and just kept intensively watching it.
So Bob,
and
why don't I put up your photos and we'll go through those and you can tell us all about it. All right, so we've got the first two on the screen, so why don't you go ahead, Bob?
Okay, that's a shot of the canola, probably out of the ground, probably 5 days, 7 days, I'm not sure. And that was back in September the 12th. So it may have been 10 days roughly. And I guess all I'm trying to show, it's not precision planting, but it's reasonably well spread. And my grandson is kind of poking me to say we should be considering precision planting. And it costs a lot more to go to precision planter. You can't get the capacity that we get. We're using actually a 70-foot planter, so we can cover a tremendous amount of ground. We can place the fertilizer carefully, accurately through an air seeder world. So that's kind of those first 2 shots. You can see a couple holes, so it isn't precision, but it's, you know, it's, I think it's satisfactory because, you know, if you push 6 or 7 feet of height out of it, it'll jam to all the sun holes there is. So I know the opinion we can't afford to go to the cost and the lost capacity. So the next one would be 3, I guess. And that's somewhat the same thing. You can see there's some holes in there, but you can see my lines on the bottom. And when we use an air seeder, we're kind of planting in a bit of a hollow, and we're trying to get the growing point closer to the ground and help it survive across the winter. So that's what I was trying to show in 3. And then in 4, without precision and individual placement of seed, you can see a little canola plant in the bigger one, so it becomes a weed. So still arguing on precision planting, and then shoot up to number 5. And that's just somewhat showing the same thing. It isn't perfect, but I'm of the opinion it's satisfactory. And sometimes in life, in farming life, you got to decide if you're going for precision and smaller acreage or trying to get close enough. And then if you flip on to number 6, what I'm trying to show there, canola is probably the most tender crop that we work with in regards to weeds. It just does not like weeds. So you can see in the background, the canola looks pretty good, but there's a little bit of volunteer wheat there, and it's knocking the pants out of the canola, rapeseed canola. And the same thing in number 7, it's showing the same pattern. You can see the pressure that a little bit of wheat puts on against the crop. So you got to manage this crop somewhat like a vegetable. You got to treat it with tender, loving care, and weed control is important. And if you're following fall wheat, that fall wheat is trying to grow, trying its damnedest. So we'll probably run a couple of shots of Roundup to get as much as out of we can at different times. And if that doesn't work, then we'll have to come back with a Sure. And actually, if you can see those pictures well enough, the wheat that in there is turning yellow, and the Sure has got it, but the Sure is very slow reactor. So it's a lot better to get it the hell out of there. So we do a lot of stuff trying to make sure we get any potential chance of volunteer wheat or other grasses and weeds out of the thing. If you flip up to number 9.
Number 8.
We up to 9 now?
No, 8.
8. Well, it's the same pattern. Let's jump it to 9.
Okay.
The block of wood, that's what I got that arrow pointing down. So it's a 4 by 4 by 12 inches. So the canola is pretty lush, probably pushing 15 inches. If you pull number 10 up.
Yep. It's there.
There. Oh, it's up there now. You can see the leaves were pushing 20 inches long. So we're still trying to learn, and I often bugging Megan trying to say, learn, or trying to ask her what she thinks. So I was of the opinion maybe we're getting too lush. And, you know, but I think Megan's probably said to me the key is to keep it from bolting. So we got 20-inch leaves without bolting, so we got a very strong root system, and it didn't bolt. And the date on that is October the 20th. And one of the other tough things in growing winter canola is when you're planting way back in, maybe the last day in August, depending where you're, but into the first week in September, you do not know what the next 2 months of weather is going to be. So it's a little bit of a crapshoot trying to know when your planting date should be. And then if you go through number 11 and 12, they were shot on 15th of December. So, you know, in my day, when I was a kid, we probably would have had, I don't know, a couple feet of snow by December the 15th and hard frozen ground. So it did get a pretty good frost by the time those 11 and 12 pictures were shot. But it's still trying to grow. And today's January the 5th, I think, and we only got about an inch of snow and sitting out there, and the winter's kicking away at it. So I'm just saying there's unknowns. Finally, on December the 15th, we got a hard killing frost. But
so these photos are from, a lot of them are from the crop that's in the ground now. But it's still good to hear about the experience you're having out there. Probably you had more growth this year than you did last year in the fall. Yeah. Okay.
Definitely. We were worried this year about it bolting.
Yeah.
Where we all last year.
Yeah.
Megan, what's in my head is you don't want it to get it to bolt, and it's tender. And I kind of didn't think you could get 20 inches of growth and not get bolting. So that may be partly variety driven, but the bottom line, we got it strong and we didn't get a whole bunch of bolting and flowering. And surely to God, it'll decide on the 5th of January, it's time to call it winter and quit growing.
Yeah, hopefully. It's interesting. I'm less and less worried about fall bolting. I haven't really seen any yet, so I'm not sure what's at play there yet, but it is certainly a good test of it this year. So I have your yield up on the screen here, 3,770 pounds on your, probably your best acre of the farm, and you won 3rd place in the challenge. So I have a little more info about your production practices here. Anything you want to tell us about the fertility or the pesticide use?
Well, you watch the crop. I guess I should say thank you for whoever's involved in doing canola challenge, because it has made it more fun, at least for me, you know, and it gives you something to shoot for, puts you on your toes. So I think it's a good program. So you know, thank you to whoever is helping go forward. And as we watched the crop grow, Dallas and Dave and I, or at least I thought, yeah, maybe this is the best piece of the field. It was hard to really determine, right? We had a hell of a job really saying where the best was.
Right.
But put the combine in with yield monitor, you can start to tell. And actually, where we thought it was best, it was probably 34 or 33 or something pounds, or I forget exactly. So we did a yield test in that part of the field. And then we were over doing other things, agronomically, playing with seeding rates and depths and various things. So we were over there doing yield checks on other things besides yield. And then I guess luckily we did that, and it bounces up another 300, 400, 500 pounds or something.
Yeah.
And then Dallas runs the combines, and with a yield monitor on, he would have seen places that it was probably pushing 100, I guess.
Yeah, 100 came up pretty frequently,
but not consistent, you know.
Right.
And I guess does that in the corn crop a little bit too. The yield monitor will vary.
Same thing.
And then I was surprised to the first place winner. Congratulations to him, because he was way above us and way above normal, but you know, he accomplished it. So we tried very hard.
Sorry, yeah.
Harder next year.
Yeah, that top field, winning field was really exceptional looking crop and very even. Every plant looked the same. So yeah, it was very cool to see. So why don't I turn it over to Hubert to ask you a few more questions in the last few minutes here. You're muted right now, Hubert, so just unmute before you ask your question.
Hubert's going to ask us a couple questions.
Thank you, Megan. Just from a grower's perspective here, tell me more about your planter or your seed drill. You're saying you have a semi-precision unit. What kind of equipment do you use to put seed in the ground?
It's a New Holland 2070 hoe drill.
Oh, it's a hoe drill. Okay, that's interesting. You're able to do singulation pretty good with the hoe drill. That's it's kind of uncommon because most people are disc and we're always trying to shy away from the hoe. But it's interesting you can have that kind of stand with a hoe drill.
We were always in the discs, and I think we just kind of got tired of the maintenance in here. Prince Edward County is very rocky and very hard. So we were constantly working on it. So we eventually, I guess, took a pretty big risk and went to a hoe drill, and we're pretty happy with it.
It's really Western Canadian designed equipment. I actually know the head designer, and it folds back so that we're pretty large. You know, we're pushing 14 feet high and I don't know, probably 120 or 30 feet long when everything's put together. And it sucks a lot of power, but we can cover a lot of acreage, and it does a very good job of placing the seed at planting time. So we can get the seed in the ground, we can get it in a bit of a hollow, and it's not 100% precision, but I don't want to spend the extra money and lose 50% of our acreage per day capacity.
Right.
I think it's working well. You had a really good stand there. Other question, do you guys do any other like on-farm trials, like maybe reducing the amount of nitrogen or other micronutrients that you're trying?
Well, actually this year we didn't reduce anything. We actually went to more based on what we thought the crop needed, and what we did a couple of tissue tests in the, I guess, when it was flowering, and it varied as to what we thought it needed, but it always seemed to lack boron. So we applied more boron in the fall, I guess it was this year, and then
like it's a crop same as many others, but maybe more intense. It loves nitrogen.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll stand pretty well, but you got to economically say how far you should go, and then you got to watch the environmental, that you're not buggering around on the environment and trying to balance between those worlds. Something else I was thinking about. I can't think of it now. Nitrogen, boron. Planting date is hard to pick when the hell you should be planting, but the growth we got this year without bolding, I think, says that variety it's not as big a risk as it used to be with the older varieties.
Mhm.
And I guess my brain says the bigger and the stronger we get it in the fall, hopefully the better it'll winter and bounce back in the spring.
Certainly a bigger root is helpful because it's surviving on that root. And if it has a nice big root, I think it'll get going faster in the spring. You might lose some of the foliage, but I think, yeah, the size of the root for sure is important. Hey, Barry, you have another question for us?
Yes, another question. With all these nice, huge yields, I'm just wondering, is there any challenges for harvesting that crop? Does it lodge at all, or is it standing nice, and does it feed well, or what are you guys using to harvest, and how does that go?
We didn't run into any lodging issues. I know we've had canola lodge before, but surprisingly it didn't. We were pretty short this year, it seemed. It was stunted pretty hard at
We didn't get a
flowering.
whole lot of rain. Yeah, we came through pretty tough environmental lack of water. We haven't got the best soil in the world. We're over bedrock. Sometimes we only got a foot of soil. And actually where that variety was taken, we likely only got 18 inches of soil there.
Yeah.
And our yield had to be affected because of drought, because the corn was affected, the wheat was affected, the soybeans was affected, so why wouldn't the canola be affected?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, if you're selling canola $550 a ton, that's $13 a bushel. You know, you can afford to go a little higher than you can on $5 or $6 corn on your inputs.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah. $12 a bushel, it covers a handful of nitrogen. So,
yeah.
But I think it's management intensive and responsive to top management. You can't treat this crop lightly. You cannot go in with a bunch of weeds and think it's going to come through. It will not work.
Yeah, Bob was telling me it was a princess when he was phoning me through the season. So what kind of harvesting equipment did you use? I'm not sure if you mentioned that.
It's direct cut. We use claws combines.
Okay, yeah.
Standard header, yeah.
We did use both, the special canola head, you know, with the cutters up both sides and the extended table. And we also use the conventional. I've done that, you know, I've been growing canola, I don't know, 50 years, maybe, whatever, long time. And I've always not been as high on those cutters on the end. It's one more thing to buy, one more thing to maintain. And when you're going through the canola, you've got to be cutting pods and you've got to be cutting vines to get through.
Right.
So I'm a fan to modify the end dividers. And, you know, we modify them quite a bit. I think it's better, but, you know, we tried both. And I don't think we're going to go to a special canola head.
We didn't seem to notice that much of a benefit from the actual canola head.
Okay.
Judging by on the ground finding seeds.
On paper, there's no question that a canola head is better on paper than a conventional head. Mm-hmm. And I've used a draper head in it too. And, you know, draper heads, I got a buddy in Saskatchewan, Greg Honey, that built honeybee headers and building headers for a long time. And he was always yattering at me that draper heads were better. And finally him and I got a deal. And we only run the draper head personally a couple of years. And then got out of it. And winter canola is, when you're harvesting, it's like a whole bunch of frozen icicles. You know, they're stiff and they don't like sitting on a draper table. You know, if you got I don't know, crop of wheat, it'll flop down and sit on the draper table, but the canola will sit up on top of it. And then you got to put augers in it and modify your header to deal with it. So you can make a conventional head work quite successfully. You should play with it a bit, but I don't know, it'll work. You can make them work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you use an extended table or those side knives?
We did, yes. They were on that one that we tried.
Oh, I just wondered if Hubert has used that as well.
I used to have those when I was swathing back in the day. from my observation, I thought they drop more pods on the ground than just a straight divider. Like the hunters are saying, if you modify a good divider, I believe you actually keep more pods in the table than as the knife will cut through it, and then it just kind of falls on the ground in between. So I never really liked that much. And like I say, it's another maintenance thing, and you're dealing with this thing, and if it stops running, well, then you can't go. So I got rid of those back in the day, and ever since I've been doing straight cut, I'm just using dividers now, and I'm using a regular table too with an air reel, and I'm getting along fine. I'm sure I'm losing some, but I mean, for me, I find it acceptable. I have one header, and I don't have to have just a special header just for the canola, and then you're parking that in the shed for the rest of the year. So I'm using the same mentality as them. I find it simpler. Just kind of modify it, tweak it, and you'll get decent losses on the combine. So.
Out of curiosity, we were probably running the special canola head when we actually took the sample.
Yeah.
Because we had it on early and we cut that early, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And canola is hard to do a visual yield check on. You know, it's hard to walk through, and you know, it's very difficult. Corn, you can walk out in and make a pretty good estimation. Soybeans, probably, you know, you get reasonably good at it. But canola, you can't tell until you put the head in, start cutting it up, and open it up, and
generally, yeah,
you get surprises.
I usually refuse to do yield estimates for that reason. All right, well, we've talked for at least 15 minutes, so we'll probably cut it off there, but we look forward to seeing how your next crop turns out. Maybe we'll see you again in the yield challenge next year. So thanks so much for joining us.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right, have a good day. So I'm here with our second place canola yield challenge winner, Nathan, and I'm also here with one of our Ontario Canola Grower Association delegates, Kelsey. So Kelsey, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Kelsey Banks, and I'm an agronomist and a district field representative for District 3 for the Ontario Canola Growers Association.
Awesome, thanks. And Nathan, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Nathan Van Overloop. I cash crop in Southern Ontario, and we grow certain crops like even cucumbers, vegetables, but we tried winter canola. This is our second year growing it and had pretty good results.
Yeah, absolutely. Nathan's won the yield challenge last year, so definitely having some excellent results. So I'm just going to put up some photos of Nathan's field. I did visit the field a few times this year. Here we go. Backing up. Okay, so I didn't get there in the fall, but I take it you had good overwintering because the crop looked good in the spring. And so here on the left, I have a photo from May 1st, and it was clearly off to the races really fast. It was warm at first, but then the photo in the middle is when we had a bit of frost, right, Nathan?
Yeah, kind of right at the start of flowering. It was a late spring frost. I was quite concerned. I was texting Megan, trying to figure out if this crop was going to survive or if we had to think about different plants for the year.
Yeah, so the plants just kind of droop over when it's cold, right? And then they kind of stand back up when it's warmer.
Yeah, and this was probably the second or third time it ended up like this in our field.
Scary. Yeah, we saw a few cracked stems and things in some other fields. I don't know if I noticed any in yours. Let's see if I can move this video a little bit. On the right, I have a photo. We saw, by the time it got to flowering, we could see down the main stem we did lose some pods and flowers during that early flowering frost event. So, but hopefully, I think that the branches that come later can kind of compensate for some of those early losses. But on the whole, I think we're pretty happy with how the crop pulled through that frost event.
Yep.
So I have a couple other pictures here from later in the season. So of course you have to see it during full bloom because it just looks so beautiful. And then we've got some pictures of the plants fully potted up. Any other comments during flowering while we got the photos up?
No, not really. It was just, yeah, pretty vibrant and full of bees. So that was awesome to see. Things looked good at that point too. And we were definitely out of the scare factor from the frost at that point, which was nice.
Yeah, for sure. And in particular, it's bumblebees. I noticed your field
Yeah.
is always full of bumblebees. I guess they like that early resource.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we're happy to have for the pollinators in our area at least. So
Awesome. Okay, well, we'll turn it over to Nathan then to talk a little bit about those production practices. And I've got some of the information up here on the slide and his yield. So the yield was 4,429 pounds to the acre, which is impressive. So Nathan, I'll let you tell us about how you grew the crop.
okay, so we started out. Yeah, we planted September 15th, like it says, and but we didn't have a 15-inch row planter this year, so we did a different planting pattern. I just modified our corn planter on 30-inch rows, and bought some plates that were actually canola plates for the planter itself. And it was a white planter, vacuum planter, and it singulated quite well. The only issue being the spacing. So what I decided to do, and I don't know if it was the right thing, was cut the population in half on 30s and then double up and cross the field on an angle using GPS. So it looked funny when it was growing until it filled in, and it eventually did branch out and fill in the gaps, which was nice because we were kind of concerned about weed escapes, especially chickweed and things like that. So it seemed to basically take care of filling in by, I guess, the first picture there, which was in May. So after that, yeah, we had in the springtime after the winter, we noticed a couple drowned out areas as typical, but we had water laying in that area due to another issue with tiling. So we ended up just leaving it and seeing what would happen. And yeah, nothing grew there, but the rest of the field looked pretty awesome. And so for I guess it would be in the fall time, we ended up applying our herbicide and Assure for getting rid of the volunteer wheat. And I didn't really notice an issue there, so I was pretty happy doing that. Springtime came around and we went in with our 28% in our sulfur product, and we tried an area of the field that we had a higher rate of sulfur just because we had heard that was definitely a good thing to try. Why not? I already had the sprayer set up for that ratio, I guess, and ended up just doing like one pass in one area and flagged it off, and thought we'd try that one for the canola challenge. So that's what brought us the 4429, and we're pretty happy with that. So the rest of the field was at a lower rate, but I think I've got here it was 46 gallons to the acre of UAN and 8 gallons to the acre of the sulfur product, which was 120022 ATS. So the rest I can tell you about. We noticed a huge difference this year. We used Regulone to desiccate the crop, and it only took like 4 days max to harvest. And we got in the field a little bit later in the day. I think it was closer to 4:30, 5 o'clock by the time we started harvesting, and the moisture was dropping like about a point an hour, which was kind of scary because we were concerned about combine settings and things like that. But it turned out okay to combine. The only issue we kind of came across was header loss again. But all in all, pretty happy with that. I'd adjust a few different things maybe next year, like fan speed, things like that. But it's hard to tell on a smaller acreage. This was 26.5 acres this year. So, anything else you want to know?
Well, just clarify. So on the spring fertility, you got it out well before the frost, I'm sure.
Yes, definitely. I think it was in April. I guess I didn't write that down, but we got in kind of the same program where we go through and put 28 on our wheat and just kept going into the canola as early as we can, try and get it to green up, and it seems to enjoy that first shot of nitrogen quite well. So we are in there early.
Awesome. So I'll just, before I turn it over to Kelsey for some questions. So most of the field had 140 pounds of actual nitrogen, right?
Yep.
And then the sulfur was just over 20 pounds on the bulk of the field, but then in the high yield area that brought you this win, you had just over 30 pounds of sulfur.
Yep. Yeah.
All
So-
right. So Kelsey, take it away with some questions.
Well, it's really interesting to me that you also are growing different crops, like not just commodity crops. You're growing as well as something like fruit and vegetables as well. So, what would your crop rotation be then for that field? Like, what was it last year?
It was winter wheat. We've kind of tried some different things trying to figure out crop rotation in terms of what we could plant it after. Definitely not corn. Like we have seed corn that came off in September this year, but it wasn't an option just due to atrazine. But we probably could after the cucumber crop if we have one this year, just because of the chemicals are fine when it goes through for residuals.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, interesting. And what about, and sorry, I keep looking over here, but I have my cheat sheet of my questions that I wanted to ask too. So what was your seeding rate then that you had for this crop?
So we ended up going with seeds per acre. It was 225,000 is what we shot for, which is kind of low, I think. I think we'd, like this fall we planted higher, but we did pounds per acre. We used a different planter on 15-inch rows. So we ended up probably around 275 this year, or even 280, whatever equated out to 3.5 to 3.8 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, it obviously was a good start then that you had to it. So by the looks of it. So, and then I was wondering, did you end up using a fungicide then this year? I mean, in Eastern Ontario, it's a little bit different climate zone here, so I don't quite know what you guys had for weather.
Yeah, I would recommend a fungicide. I didn't use it this year. I don't know if you can see it in the one picture, but we just noticed a few of the, I guess the actual plants, not just the pods, but the whole plant had matured. I'd say at least a week and a half earlier. And I'm guessing that was white mold in the field.
Yeah.
So
And were you on 30-inch rows, you said?
Yeah, that was 30, but we crossed to trying to fill the gaps and make it more like a 15. I didn't want to go with the rows.
Yeah.
I saw they'd trample too much with our planter, but so there was airspace there, but we still ended up with white mold from what I saw.
Yeah, I agree. Canola is a crop that it does tend to do very well when you put fungicide on it, and in this case, it did very well without too. But I also was wondering though, then, and it kind of leads into this. So when it comes to winter canola management, do you think that there needs to be more research done in terms of in terms of growth and in terms of fertility and so on and so forth? Like, do you see any room that we should be doing some more research on it?
It'd be nice to see, fungicide, I guess, but also like sulfur rates to see if you can get from the economic standpoint, like what would be the ultimate sulfur rate or kind of a variance there, just so that you can plan ahead. Like I'm going to try again this year, trying to hit it with higher sulfur rates because we just don't know. Like maybe there's more potential there yet. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, that's great. And I guess like one of my final questions for you was about what were the differences between this year and last year. Do you think that it's more like weather, or was it more like field-based, like management?
Yeah, kind of a combination. Definitely the planting pattern. I don't think I'd do that again.
I didn't include a photo because it did look different, right? It was. I had to call him, like, what am I looking at here?
Yes. Yeah, I went crazy and just said, no, I'll just try it, whatever. So.
But it's true. Fields where you have the planter running over a row, that row is stunted and is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. Definitely the planting pattern I'd change next year. And then, like, I guess it would have been this fall we did 15-inch rows again.
Mhm.
And probably higher sulfur. I'd go that route, and fungicide, no doubt. I'm going to try it again next year and pay for it. Not going to be cheap this time. So, but yeah, and stick to reg loam. I think
Yeah.
it just dried it down that much quicker, and we were happy with that. So yeah.
Well, it's very interesting just to see the differences in canola growing from based on the pictures, and then also canola that was growing around here. I know it was spring canola here that we were looking at mainly, but yes, very interesting to see that, just we're all sharing knowledge of it, so it's great to see.
Yeah.
That's why I love the yield challenge, because we didn't get to talk about it. So we've kind of got to 10 minutes here. I don't know if you had one last question or anything else you wanted to say, Nathan. I have one question, if that's allowed.
Okay.
So I know like some of the other fields in your area are in heavier soils, and do you think that that's a big part of your success, is some of the lighter soils?
From what we're understanding, yeah, I'd say definitely try a lighter ground. It seems the wet feet just in the fall or in the spring seems to take away from it. But I mean, it does really good to the ground to have that root system in a heavier ground situation. That's definitely a benefit I see for the heavier ground. This year we're trying it on like a not as sandy of soil, but something that would drain well. So I guess we'll find out, but still to be learned. I mean, that's something else maybe for research is to try different soil types for sure.
Yeah. So, well, we've got you convinced on the winter canola game, I think, because you've won the yield challenge and placed second this year, and you plan to do it again. So.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hooked for now. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and we'll hopefully see you here again next year. And thank you so much for joining us, Kelsey.
Yeah,
No problem. Thanks for asking.
I'm here with our first place winners of the Canola Growers Challenge and also one of our delegates. So Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself, where you farm, and your name?
All right. No, name's Jeff Curry, and we're from the Owen Sound area. I work up this way with my dad, and yeah, we're cash crop growers and grow the main crops, I guess, corn, soybeans, wheat, and we grow canola and a few edibles as well.
Very good. Thanks so much. And I'll turn it over to the Tolls to introduce yourselves. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, guys.
Nick, and this is my dad, Ian. We're in Blenheim, Ontario, right in Chatham-Kent. We grow mostly corn, soybeans, and wheat, and we started growing canola 2 years ago. And so far, we've been enjoying it.
Yeah, I guess, eh? Since you won the challenge, that's one way to enjoy it. All right, I will throw up some slides here, and we'll look at some photos. So I didn't get out to your field in the fall when you planted it, but you obviously had great survival. So here's some photos from May 1st, and it really got going early, and there's tons of buds on those plants already, which was pretty exciting. But you probably had a little bit of frost damage. Did you see any frost damage this year?
Yeah, there was one in the fall more than in the spring.
Oh, okay. Very good. And, oh, go ahead.
We had a mild fall, and it just kept growing and growing, and we were worried at one point that it was going to get too big, but frost and the weather finally hit it. But there was a bit of damage with the frost.
Right.
And then in the spring we had a late frost, and just before it started to get that stage, and we were also worried, but it turned the tops of them purple, but it didn't. It seemed to grow right through it. It didn't bother it any.
Right, perfect. Yeah, I was really happy with how Mercedes tolerated the frost in the late spring this year. Okay, so of course you have to have some of the flowering photos. So I think the top photo was taken from the sprayer. So you put fungicide on the 21st. But what I loved about this field was first of all, winter canola has huge bud clusters. And also in your field, every plant looked the same. It was almost like a cornfield, big plants, nicely branched out, and every plant exactly the same. I guess that was your first opportunity to really see that, but I don't know if you had any other comments about the flowering period.
No, I don't think so.
It was, you had a lot of visitors though, eh?
Yeah, there's lots of people stopping for photos. That's for sure.
Awesome. Okay, and then just a few pictures when it potted up. So of course, I saw a couple of these you posted on Twitter, and like I said, lots of branching and really healthy looking plants. And I think I've seen the winter canola pods are a little longer than the spring canola pods, although you guys live too far south to grow spring canola, so you're probably not super familiar with it. All right, so we have your some of your production info here. I think I've got it all down accurately as far as I know. Did you want to talk about the crop a little bit and just what you did and spend a few minutes telling us how you managed it, maybe some of your equipment?
Yeah, so I guess the previous crop, and start with that, was wheat, and then we had sold the straw to a dairy farm just down the road. So I think that helped us get the seed bed ready. We're just able to, there was less trash to deal with. And then as for planting, we don't have anything of our own to do a very good job planting the seed at this point. So we hired Ridge Valley Farms to do that. And they used their John Deere air seeder, and it, like you said, it seemed to do a pretty good job with a nice even stand.
Yep.
And then from there, yeah, I think we just got lucky and we got all the timing for the fungicide application and everything right where it needed to be, and everything worked out pretty good.
For sure. So yeah, I guess I'll turn it over to Jeff if you had any questions. I guess otherwise, we didn't really see any insects in the crop to worry about, and fungicide got on in a timely fashion. You had lots of fertility out, so it certainly wasn't hungry. Jeff, did you have any questions for the guys?
I was thinking, you guys said, is this your first or your second canola crop?
Our second crop. Our first one was the previous year, and there was a lot of winter kill in the wheat in the area that year, and we had a lot of winter kill in our canola as well. And we, in hindsight, maybe should have sprayed it off and planted something else, but it was our first year, so we just left it to see what it could do.
Okay, so what do you think of the crop?
I think there's definitely some potential there, especially with the way the prices have been going lately.
Yeah.
I guess I like the idea of the fall seeded crop, because then if for whatever reason it doesn't look very good in the spring, you got a second chance, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So were you guys able to put anything in after your canola crop down there? Like,
we planted soybeans right after the next day, and got some timely rains on those too, and had an over a 30 bushel crop of second crop beans.
nice.
And they're not all sold yet either, so some of them were sold at a decent price, and the next one is, you know, where the price is today. It's a moneymaker.
That's right.
It's a good
Very
feeling.
good. So I didn't catch on the slides, but did it show what kind of population did you guys plant at?
Ooh. Yes.
What did we put on, like 3 pounds or 2.5 pounds? So that'd be about 200.
Yeah, I guess I don't know exactly what the population was. We kind of, the people that were planting it for us, we kind of, they were planting some of their own, and they just left it set where it was. I guess it'd be, basically everything we did was just what Megan recommended throughout the year. So we just followed the book and everything worked out well.
And your agronomist, he was definitely walking it all the time.
Quite a bit too. He was checking on the field almost daily.
Yeah, I think I talked to the guys that seeded your crop, and they're seeding just under 4 pounds to the acre. But of all the fields I've seen them plant, they had really nice spacing, like not too thick at all. Because Jeff, I know we try to go 5 pounds or sometimes higher with spring canola, but we really need space between the plants so that the crowns are nice and snug to the ground. So they tend to be a bit thin, and you guys had pretty big stalks on the plants, so I don't know if there was any challenges at harvest, but.
No, it cut nice. We put a new knife on the header right before we started, and yeah, I guess Dad did all the combining, and we got it all done in a day, and it worked out pretty good.
Awesome. Jeff,
Very
you go
nice.
ahead if you have more questions. Jeff, you can go ahead if you have more questions.
Yeah, what type of harvesting equipment do
We
you
have
use?
a case 5130. We have a case 5130 combine with 30-foot flex auger.
And did you have any challenges harvesting that canola?
No, just the biggest challenge is that you just have to stay at 1.5 mile an hour max, and I have a hard time doing that with my hand on the hydrostat. But
Yeah, it's slow going.
we did apply the first trip around the field with the desiccate. We did not use a pod stick, and the rest we did. I really couldn't see a lot of difference in the shattering. We did have a 1.5 inch rain in between of application and harvest, so I don't know how well the pod stick actually stayed on the pod. I plan on using the pod stick again. It's supposed to be a benefit, so that those little seeds and they thrash so easy, we got to get them into the combine. So trying to use every method we can.
Yeah,
for
I
that.
was a little nervous by the time we did get to combining it, because you could just brush your hand against the plant and hear the seeds raining down. But we managed to get most of it in the combine.
No, that's good. What I guess what makes this a profitable crop for you guys? I guess part of it is the ability to double crop soybeans afterwards, but
Which we might not be able to do every year though either. So
Yeah, you kind of got in there right before the deadline. Well, I don't know if there's a deadline, but July 15th is probably the day, right? Where any
Yeah.
later than that.
it all comes down to a rain. Like if you can get your beans in and get a rain within the next few days and get them up, they'll be up and going within a couple of days and everything's good. But if they sit there for a while, then you get too far behind. That's for sure.
Right.
And with the second crop beans, we're close enough to the lake that our fall extends a little bit as well compared to farther north. You don't have to go very far and they lose a week difference in maturing, and that just seems to make the difference for us for double cropping.
Yeah, and there was an early frost in the area too, September 18th, I believe. And we're right on the ridge, and anything north of the ridge, those guys got frosted. Even the longer first crop beans got frosted, whereas it seemed like the frost didn't come over the ridge. So we got lucky there, and ours didn't get affected by it.
Right. Okay, we have time for maybe one more question. Jeff, did you have any final questions for the guys?
I guess you put some canola in again this past fall. Did you change anything up, or did you do anything different, or?
Little bit heavier ground this year, just the field we had available to us. But no, same variety, same planting rate, same fertility. So just trying to mimic what we did last year.
And I walked that field at the end of October, and I thought, oh, it's not as far along as I'd like to see it. Well, we've had a whole month or more of good growing conditions since then, so it should be nice and large now.
It looks a lot different now than it did when you walked it.
Yeah, for sure. Very good. Okay, anybody have any final thoughts? Or should we just congratulate you guys on the big win?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, well done. Some of the other winners were congratulating you as well. This is a number we haven't seen before in the yield challenge. We have broke the 5,000 pound mark, but this is pretty high, eh, Jeff? Something to aspire to.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, guys.